of our life hacks. We're kind of a beginner class for around ages 16 to 22, so this is a real basic class. If you're a little more advanced, you might know everything that we're doing, but we are going to share, or I'm going to share, a really basic chocolate chip cookie recipe with you, and then kind of just give you tips and tricks and things along the way. So for one, you're going to need just some basic items. Like I said, this is a chocolate chip cookie recipe, so we're going to have, I have a KitchenAid mixer here we're using at the library, but you could totally use just a hand mixer if that's all you have, or even just like a real heavy wooden spoon. You're going to need butter. We use the real thing, real unsalted butter. We're going to have a couple of sticks of that. Also, eggs, sugar. I've got sugar and brown sugar back here, and I store mine in just these little tubs. That way it stays fresh and it's easy to measure. And I also we're going to use all-purpose flour today. There's all different kinds of flour, but you just want all-purpose flour for this. Just a regular standard flour. And then you want to get yourself for baking. You definitely want to get some measuring cups. This has a cup, half a cup, a third of a cup, a fourth of a cup, and an eighth of a cup. Really the most important ones I use are the half and the full cup. And also some little spoons, little measuring spoons. I take mine off. They always come on like a little ring, but I always take mine off. But you do you. And then for egg breaking, I always have 2 bowls, one for your eggs and one for your shells. You never want to break your eggs into your mixer in case you get some shells in there. And then you'll need a small bowl and then a sifter. And then we'll talk about sifting when we get to it. And then we're going to have vanilla, baking soda, salt, and our chocolate, which we're just using milk chocolate here. This recipe is really versatile. You could use dark chocolate. We use toffee bits, butterscotch, espresso. And we're using baking soda today, not baking powder, because we want our cookies to spread out, not be big puffy like biscuits. So let's get started. We're going to open 2 sticks of butter, which is half a cup. So if you want to write this down, get out your pad and pen. It's 2 sticks of butter, which is half a cup. And this is already real soft. So when you bring your butter home from the grocery store, you want to leave it out, or you can pop it in your microwave, for just very little time, 10 seconds, and kind of check it to see, or else, you'll have melted butter. Maybe put it in a bowl or a plate or something, because sometimes it'll melt all over the place. And then we'll put that in the mixer, our softened butter. And then we're going to do a cup each of these sugars. This here is brown sugar. And you're going to kind of look at your 1 cup, kind of loosen it up a little bit, and then you want to pack this down. You want a packed cup, if that makes sense, of the brown. And then we're also going to do a cup of the white as well. This is just white granulated sugar, not powdered sugar, but just granulated sugar. Cup of each of those. Okay. And then we'll come over to the mixer. And this is going to have a paddle attachment. If you're just using a hand mixer, just use the little beaters that come with it. If you have a KitchenAid, put the paddle on. It's working while we go. Well, this isn't working, you guys. Let's move it over. Real quick, technical difficulty. Hold on, you guys. Let's see. This is a workout too. This is heavy.
Troubleshooting in the kitchen.
I know it. Troubleshooting. Well, you guys, this is not going to work. What do you guys think? Come assist me. And I'll measure out some things maybe. You want to try? It was just working. Well, while we get that beating, what you want to do is beat that and like cream those, your butter and your sugar together. You might just have to show it in, like I was saying, if you didn't have a mixer, you just need to use a big wooden spoon. We may just have to really go old school. Let's find a wooden spoon over here. This is just going to be a really good workout. Well, if your butter is soft enough, you can totally get this done with your hand. It just takes a little bit longer. And I need to work it, so let's just do it. You'll kind of want to work this together. You know, of course, it's easier if you have your mixer. So you can definitely do it this way. So you want to get your butter and your sugars mixed all the way up. And then, in the meantime, while that's mixing, that's funny, get your eggs broke up. Now, you want to have 2 bowls, like I told you, so you can break up your eggs into one. And in case a little shell falls in, you know, you can pull that out. And then you just get rid of those. And then I pour my vanilla. You can measure this out. So it's 2 eggs if you're still writing down the recipe. And then we're going to do about 2 teaspoons of vanilla in there with your eggs. And then we're just going to throw those right in to your sugar and your butter. Now this part, you really want to mix this sugar, butter, and eggs and vanilla up real good. This part you can actually put in your mixer and you can walk away for like 5 minutes if you want to. This is called creaming. You want to cream that butter, that sugar, those eggs. Ooh, I'm gonna work up a sweat doing this. You have those mixers too. I don't even know if they make them anymore. Do y'all know that have the crank? And they're like, I've seen, I don't know if they even make those anymore.
I don't think so. I think it's all electric.
But that's like the first mixer. So, back in the day, they used to make cookies without all these fancy tools that we have. So, it can be done, and they're going to be good. But you really want to keep mixing this until, like, all of your sugar and your butter is just kind of all one. It almost looks like whipped cream when you're done. So I'm going to leave that for a little bit. We might work on that again in a minute. Well, our bowl and our sifter is for our flour mixture. So, make a little spot here. And now we're using all-purpose flour. We're not using bread flour. We're not using cake flour. We're going to use just a regular all-purpose flour. Now, again, with the measuring, you kind of want to go in here, and this is going to be 2.5 cups. You want to kind of go in here with it like loose. You don't want to like pack this down like we did with the sugar. You want to go real loose in here with it, and then you're going to scrape it off with your hand, or you can use it like a knife if you want to. I just use my hand. And we're going to do 2.5. So there's 1. Just pack it in there loose, and then scrape off the top. We need 2.5, so we're going to do 1 more. This is our 1/2 cup. We're going to do the same thing. Scrape off that top. You can use scales and all of that too, but we just kind of go old school with this. I think it's pretty accurate. There's a little room here to, have a little bit of wiggle room. And then we're going to do a teaspoon each. We're going to do soda. So our cookies have, this is just regular baking soda. Now this, you're kind of going to do the same thing. You're not going to pack it. You're just going to kind of loosely to measure with your 1 teaspoon. And then I'm using kosher salt here. This is what I use at the shop, but you could use just regular table salt. You can use sea salt. And then I put this, instead of putting it inside the sifter, I put it on the side. And I'll show you about sifting here in a sec. Okay.
Is there a reason why you choose kosher salt?
I just like the flavor of it, and it's, you know, I like the grittiness of it, and I don't know, I like that salt when you're baking with any, you know, sweets. Just the salt just balances that sugar, but you could use table salt too. And then we're going to sift the flour. We want to get out any little pieces, little chunks. Baking soda is really bad about having like little chunks left over. And we don't want that in our cookie. And it also just lightens up your flour and your baking agents real nice before you add them into your dough. Add them into your sugar.
Could you sift the flour in the bowl with just a whisk?
You could. Sometimes I'll do that at the shop, like if I have a big amount of flour, because, you know, this only holds a couple of cups. So if I'm measuring something that has, you know, 5 or 6 cups, I'll usually just measure everything in a bowl. You really just want to make sure you mix your salt and your baking powder and your flour and all of that together before you pour it in, because, you know, you don't want those little chunks. You want it all to be spread out even. Now see, you can't really see here, but down in the bottom, there's actually a little bit of salt that got in. There's a couple of little chunks of baking soda in there. You just want to throw those away. You don't want to push them through. You just want to discard those. Anyway, and this is all fluffy, and you can kind of give this a little stir just to make sure all that's mixed up. And then meanwhile, while this is mixing, see, this whole time I would have had this mixing over on the mixer. Like while I measure, I always have all that put together. But we're just going to mix it a little bit more. And if you didn't have a mixer, this would be a fun one to make, like with your friends or, you know, a sibling. Someone, you know, you could take turns stirring the butter and sugar together.
It's a good arm workout.
It really is a good arm workout. This is the most I've worked all day. I'm feeling the burn. It's like an arm workout, and then you get to eat a cookie when you're done.
Well balanced.
And I forgot to tell you, at the beginning of your recipe, you want to make sure your oven is preheated to 350. Like before we started any of this, we should have turned our oven on. I already had mine on, so that's why I forgot. But definitely turn that oven on, 350 or 375. My oven at the shop cooks really hot, almost like 400 degrees. So when I bake at home, I'm always like, this oven feels so cold. And then since we're doing this by hand, I'm just going to add like half of this flour mixture in and give it a little stir. If I was doing it on the mixer, I just went ahead and added it all at once. But since we're doing it by hand, because we want to make sure all of that gets stirred in. Now, once you start adding your flour, though, you don't want to overmix because you'll work up the gluten in your flour, and it'll make your cookies kind of tough. So you can whip that butter and sugar like all day long, but once you get that flour in there, you want to just like mix it until it's just barely mixed. You want it all mixed in good, but you don't want to overbeat it. That'll make your cookie nice and tender. Let's see, I think I've added everything, and then now the best part is the chocolate. Now, this is really at the shop, this is kind of a secret, I guess we're giving out, but it's one of our basic cookies we make at the shop. This cookie you can add, like at the shop we do chocolate chip. We also do a dark chocolate pecan. And this is the whole bag, not the great big bag, but like the regular size bag, which is about 2 cups of chocolate chips. Use that all of them in. But you got pecans to this. You can add like different kinds of chips. We do a butterscotch, a toffee crunch. You got peanut butter chips, white chocolate. We do a white chocolate pecan with this. And then I go ahead and scoop these while this dough is soft. And I'm gonna use a bigger, this is like a regular size scoop. You can use this smaller one at home, especially if you want to do like little cookie sandwiches. You can use the smaller one. And then for like a regular size tray, I usually just put 6 because you want to make sure they're spread out pretty good.
What is it you have on the sheet?
Oh, this is just a regular sheet pan, you guys, with parchment paper. And I haven't sprayed it. If you don't have parchment paper, which you might not, you can just spray it with like some cooking spray, like Pam, and do it that way too. The parchment paper I like because you don't ever, you don't have to put any more oil or anything with it, and they won't stick. You'll always make sure you get them off. And then with the scooping, I just put like a full scoop. I try not to have any like hanging off the sides. And then you have like these perfect little scoops. Little cookies. And then, if no one was looking, we'd probably be snacking on the dough right now. This chocolate chip cookie does good. And then these are ready. I like to chill about 30 minutes in the fridge if you can wait that long. You could bake them like right now, but they would spread. And you might end up with one big cookie, which, wouldn't be too bad, but you want cookies. So you'd definitely let these chill in the fridge for about 30 minutes. And then you'll throw them in the oven like we do at the shop. Let's see. Do I have my container? Oh, I think I left it out there. I just use one of these containers, and I usually can get about a dozen in one of those. And then I store my extra cookies in the fridge. And then you can just pull out, like if you scoop the rest of these. You want to bring me that one? Sure, I'll show them how to do that. Because you might not want to, make the whole batch all in one day. Thank you. You can put parchment down in the bottom of this if you have it, or I usually just put it straight down in the container. This is just one of these containers. How big this one is? 4.4 liters or 1.5 gallons. And then you just continue to scoop and like just a little cookie. And these, if you're storing in the fridge, I don't know if you can see this, they can touch. Because when they get, if you leave them in there for, a few days, and they'll last for a few days. You can even put these in the freezer if you wanted to. And like at the shop, we keep 4 different little tubs of these, like 4 different cookies. And then in the mornings, we just come in and all we have to do is bake them because the dough is already done. So. Go.
So you keep them in the freezer?
No, I keep these in the fridge. Yeah, but only because we bake them too fast. Because I make cookie dough every day. I'm making a different cookie dough just to try to keep up those 4.
Does it freeze? Does it freeze?
And you can freeze them. They freeze. They freeze beautifully, and you can just take them right out of the freezer and bake them. They'll just take a little bit longer. Let me see. I think I've got like 1 more cookie. So this made, let's see, there's 3, 6, 9, 12. This is 1.5 dozen. This made 1.5 dozen of this size. Now, if you were to use these little ones, you could get quite a few more. But you might not want these gigantic ones.
You had mentioned about stirring with the flour. You don't want to do too much because it'll make them tough. If you have it where you're shaping the cookie dough with your hands and you're not using a scoop like that, is that something else you do?
Yeah, I forgot to even mention that. You can and I think it's okay if you use them with your hand. They are sticky, so I wouldn't probably use my hands, but you could definitely use like a spoon, and and like put it on a spoon and like scrape it off with another spoon. I used to make cookies like that at home all the time before I was professional. So yeah, you can definitely do that, but I wouldn't worry about overworking it. You just don't really want to have it like in your mixer where you're just like working it and like overbeating it. Because once you get those chocolate chips and that flour kind of disappears, they're done. So your preheated 350 degree oven, and you're going to start out 10 minutes, and then I like to turn them and then bake them for another like 3 to 5 minutes after that. And this is what they look like when they're done. These are just regular chocolate chip cookies. Where's the milk? Or if you're old like me, it's coffee. Where's the coffee? Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Dustin,
Enjoy.
for the wonderful presentation of cookies. I'm so excited.
Yay.
Please join us in a couple of minutes for our next presentation on mental awareness. Thank you.
Sweet. Dig in, you guys.